All right, people. So, shall we start? Like,
Let's go.
good. All right. Hi, Hector. How are you doing? Hi, Via. How are you? Fine. Good. All right, everyone. So let's go to let's begin our open class about Mark Twain's Luck. This is the last January open class that we're going to offer, right? And we plan to offer other open classes throughout the year. We'll let you know when we'll publish that on our Instagram when we have the dates, right? But this one is going to be our last one of January before the semester begins, okay? All right, so I will just share my screen. You all just confirm if you are able to see it well, if everything works fine.
Yes.
Yes, good. All right. So let's begin. All right, so today is it's Tuesday, the January the 24th, and we're going to talk about the short story Luck by Mark Twain, the very well-known and renowned writer, Mark Twain. All right, so Áureo, the floor is yours. If I can, okay, go ahead, please.
Presentations are with me today. So hello, everybody. I'm Áureo. I'm one of the teachers here at Abucaman. I'm a PhD in comparative literature by the University of Padua. And I'm also the host for the podcast Literatura Viral, which discusses the relationship between art and disease. So it's something pretty specific and strange, quite frankly. But yeah, I talk a lot about literature over there. So if you guys enjoy our work at A Book a Month, you might check that out. You may have a look. I'm teaching the novels advanced course, and this semester Anna is teaching the novels intermediate course as well as the short stories course. She is actually the smart one in here today. So she's a postdoc at the Mistilla Center, which is a German organization based in São Paulo. She's also a PhD in Brazilian literature. She actually wrote for her doctorate a history of Brazilian literature, by the way, by the perspective of animals. So she's a specialist in animal studies. And she's actually the creator of A Book a Month. She has many years of experience teaching English to kids, to young adults, and to at university level, to at letters course, right? So teaching literature and language. What else? Can you go ahead, Anna, with the slide, please? What else do I have to say? If you guys do not know A Book a Month, I guess that many of you do already, but if you don't, what is exactly a book a month? It is the idea behind it is it is a method to practice and improve language while learning about literature. Okay, so and not only literature, actually, we think about literature quite broadly. And we think about culture in general. We talk a lot about history in our classes. Yeah, they are very broad in scope, and we use them as a tool to create language immersion. So you actually you kill two birds with one stone. You practice language and improve definitely your language, your understanding, your speaking, but also you're learning a lot about literature and about history and culture in general. Okay, so what you guys will see today was actually one of the classes that we taught last semester in the short stories course. We try to engage a lot with our students and to allow them a lot of space to talk in class. This is a little bit difficult to recreate in the open classes, right? Because usually we have much more students, many more students than we actually do in classes usually. Okay, but today we are just a few, and so yeah, we're under 20, so we will try to let you guys speak as much as possible to recreate that feeling, that A Book a Month feeling. Okay, so Anna, please go ahead.
All right, people. Okay, so I have prepared a special class for you today. I hope that I can bring to you not only my literary verb, but also my meme verb, my funny verb, because this is something that I try to engage in class all the time. I'm the queen of the trash internet, if you didn't know that, and now you do. You're gonna see it from today. All right, so the short story that we're going to discuss today, it was written in 1886, as far as we can know, but it was published a few years later in Harper's Magazine, as it's very common in short stories, right? Many writers at the 19th century, during the 19th century, would publish in magazines or newspapers. So this is why sometimes we do have different versions of the same short story. So if by any chance you didn't follow the link that we put on Linktree and you looked for the short story on your own, possibly you might have found a different version, right? So, and this is why, mostly because they were published and then they were worked by the author in terms of working spelling, some kinds of adjustments, and Mark Twain is the king of doing this kind of things, right? So possibly you will find some of these examples along your way reading Mark Twain. And for those who had never like seen Mark Twain before, he's just this very photogenic guy over here who has like an atmosphere of, I don't know, maybe Schopenhauer, maybe Einstein, I don't know, you decide. And his name was actually Samuel Langhorne Clemens, right? Usually referred to as Sam Clemens, but his pen name was Mark Twain. I believe he had like other pen names, but I think that the one that stuck to his career was Mark Twain, right? So he lived mostly in the 19th century, and he has written many of the novels that you have already heard of. But I also wanted to tell you a little bit about himself and about his biography, just for you to know more or less about the content that he brings in his stories and some of the things that we're going to work in class today, right? So if you take a look around here in this map, this is Missouri. This is where he was born, in the state where he was born, right? So right in the Midwest, right? And this tells a lot about his decisions for the type of writing that he does. This tall tale writing is very adventurous, sometimes it's hard to believe. You hear the kind of things that he says in the stories and you're just like, is this really true? Have you really heard about that? Or are you just making that up, right? So he wants to leave us the doubt, right? So he was born in Missouri. And he was very famous, right? And not only afterlife, but actually during his life, right? He was very famous writing while living, which is not very common for writers living in the 19th century. Poor Edgar Allan Poe, just to mention his name, right? So probably have heard about some of the stories that he has published throughout his career. He's very much acclaimed for the series of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I think one of the most famous names of his novels, together with The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, right? All of these have this idea of coming of age stories in the kind of narrative that we follow the character growing up, and then we follow those changes that are also psychological and emotional, right? And they are very famous also, and very interesting also because of that. Other stories that might come to your mind when you think of Mark Twain is A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. This one I have never read, but the name is very interesting. And Puddinghead Wilson and Those Extraordinary Twins, right? He's the king of puns. He's a very funny guy, and I think that if you are keen to read his text with humor in mind, you're gonna have some laugh, right? I don't know if you laughed reading this one, but I'm sure that if you read it more than once, you're gonna laugh hard, right? So he's a very spirituous writer. Please.
Yet another book by which Mark Twain is quite famous for is The Innocents Abroad. This is actually not a fictional book. It's a travel narrative in which he tells about a cruise he took to the Caribbean and then to the Holy Land. So he goes to the south of Europe as well. He had from the US to Spain and Italy and Greece, and finally to Egypt and Palestine and Jerusalem and everything. And the thing is, although it's nonfiction, it is super funny. And this was the bestseller book by Mark Twain during his life, and it's one of the best sellers in the genre ever. So it was a great success in the US in the 19th century. This was the book by which he was famous for, actually. And it really tells us something about his humor and his irony. It's super funny. I actually discussed this book in my PhD because he even touches on the cholera pandemic. So for a few days, he's in quarantine in a few different places. So it's a very interesting read. Anyway, go ahead, Anna.
All right, thank you. All right, so this is a very interesting kind of genre, right? Travel literature is something that I personally very much admire, and I read this kind of genre as well. So reading something by such an important writer like Mark Twain, or for example, like John Steinbeck, who is also part of a book a month reading list this semester, it's something that can give you another perspective on the author as well. Right, so we thoroughly recommend the reading. All right, so just some curiosities about Mark Twain. I actually published some on Stories the other day, and I find it very curious that Mark Twain was a person of his time. He was very humanistic. He was very engaged with science and also with politics, right? And as I told you as well, he was pre-acknowledged as a good writer during his life. So this is just one example of this doctorate degrees that he has been offered by famous and prestigious universities throughout his life. And this is him dressed up in academic regalia, being awarded his PhD by Oxford University, right? And this is a real photo, right? It's not a montage, although it seems so, but it is a real photo, and he has earned by other universities as prestigious as Oxford University as well. But I think that my favorite curiosity about him was with his friendship with Nikola Tesla, the Nikola Tesla that you possibly will recognize by this picture here, right? So imagine living in the 19th century where you don't have many kinds of devices to help you live your life better, like, for example, electricity. And actually, he was very much interested in science and in the works of Nikola Tesla himself. So much so that they have been they got together somehow. I don't know the details, but I surely would like to know more details about this electric friendship, as I saw the other day on the Irish Times. The electricity between Mark Twain and Nikola Tesla. This was like the headline of the story, right? So they were actually close friends, right? And there is even like this picture of Mark Twain in Tesla's laboratory. This is Tesla here, very blurred. There are other pictures, and for some reason, I don't know why, but Nikola Tesla is always blurred. Maybe he was a spirit at the time and we didn't know. I don't know. He just came to Earth to create electricity. We will never know. But the thing is, there is a lot of mysticism around Mark Twain and his friendships and all his life as well. I'm sure that Elon Musk is very jealous at the moment, because who didn't want to be friends or BFFs with Nikola Tesla, right? Or with Mark Twain. We would like very much to be in those shoes. And this relationship is so famous and so commented among the literary world, that there is even this publication, which is actually not a real account, but is fiction. And it's called The Scientific Adventures of Mark Twain and Nikola Tesla by Robert Serial. And apparently, I haven't read the book, but I'm very interested in knowing a little bit more. They are two fictional characters, and they live all kinds of adventures in the universe, in electricity, traveling outside the country of the US, or maybe traveling away from Earth and visiting other countries and all, and seeing aliens. I don't know the quality of this work, but at least it is interesting for us to hear a little bit more about this beautiful friendship between Mark Twain and Nikola Tesla. And all right, so another very interesting curiosity about Mark Twain is that he was born and he died after the passage of a Halley's comet, right? Usually, if you know a little bit more about Halley comet, or the Harley comet, as it was sometimes commented in Brazil, right? People used to refer to as the Harley comet. The period of time that the comet is visible from the Earth is 75 years, right? So every 75 years or every 79 years, we do have a passage of the Halley's comet visible in the Earth atmosphere. And this is exactly like the amount of time, the amount of years that Mark Twain lived, right? So, and there is this interview that I quoted here that he says, "I came in with Halley's comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's comet." And he did, right? And he complements it by saying, "The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now here are these two uncountable freaks. They come in together, they must go out together," right? So some will say that he must have predicted his own death, right? Who knows? He was such an interesting guy that he has been able to predict his own death, or he really wished to be carried away by Halley's comet as well. Yes. So here are some interesting facts about this man, and also I would like to give you some details about the way that he writes. Have you ever read anything by Mark Twain before? No? First time? All of you? I cannot see everyone via yes. I don't know. I cannot read the chat right now, but maybe if Áureo can tell me if everybody is answering. Yeah, some of you, yes, right? All right. Okay, so just to give you, of course, like when I say that tall tales are the kinds of works or genres that define the work by Mark Twain, this is not exactly true, but it's some part of it, some part of what he has produced, mostly because of where he comes from, the Midwest, which was a kind of genre of oral spoken tales that were usually brought to life in order to amaze people with very exaggerated facts and exaggerated stories that were sometimes very difficult to believe. This is some kind of characteristic that we see in the works by Mark Twain, right? So formally, a tall tale is a story with unbelievable events related as if it were true and factual, right? Some tall tales are exaggerations of actual events. And this is something that we recognize a lot when we go to, I don't know, maybe family reunions. We always have like a cousin or an aunt or an uncle who tells like this very exaggerated story. And then you're just like, really? Has this really happened to you? Or you're just like exaggerating? Possibly you yourselves or me, myself, have actually told stories that are a little bit exaggerated. But the thing is, in American literature, this is actually a thing, right? So much so that we have different examples of stories publications that are sometimes aimed at the young adult public, like for example these ones that we have here. This one here below doesn't have the name, but it's actually Pecos Bill, and in his stories that he was recognized because he was able to lasso a hurricane, right? So how probable is that, right? So this is the kind of deal that we see, for instance, in stories which are called tall tales. Yes. There is this famous story, which was one of the first published by Mark Twain in form of short stories in magazines, which is the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County, right? Calaveras County is located in the region of California. And this story is a clear example of tall tale, right? And it's a story that someone has heard and then told the narrator, and then the narrator is telling us the story. And apparently, this jumping frog of Calaveras County is the highest jumping frog of all the county, of all the world, possibly, right? And this is the story, and is usually told in a tone to make the reader believe that this is actually true, that there is no truer fact than this, the one that he is telling us in his stories, right? So I already asked you this question before, but we can come back to this question for you to be able to tell me, so I can listen to your voices by telling me which stories by Mark Twain have you read, right? But like in my case, I have read some of the short stories, right? Of course, the ones that we have worked in a book a month before. This was one of the ones that we have worked together with Luck, right? And spoiler alert, this one is very fun, right? If you want to read it, I think it would be a good follow-up to reading Mark Twain's short stories. And of course, like Tom Sawyer's Adventures and Huckleberry Finn, some of my favorite when I was growing up. So I think that probably you have read those ones as well. And if you haven't, the short story is also a good way for you to have your first contact with the work of a writer, right? So if you enjoyed reading what you are reading now, possibly you might want to pick up one of those novels and expand your knowledge of the work by Mark Twain. All right, people, so let's begin talking about the short story itself, which was published in 1886, right? So Luck is the name of such story. And can someone summarize what happens? I don't know, you don't need to say it loud, but if you could, open your mic and just tell me maybe like some of the events that you recognize as happening in the story, like how it begins, who are the characters, what is the course of the events? Who tells the story to begin with?
Just confess that I didn't read yet. I was reading minutes before I go to get into here.
No worries, Magda, no worries, you're excused. But you made the effort to come here and you acknowledge it in front of the teacher. Come on, this is so brave. But this is a good example, right? And this brings us to the subject that when you come to a book a month class, even if for that night or for that day you couldn't prepare and read the full story or the full novel before coming to class, right? That's no need for you not to come to class, right? Because of course this is an introduction that is going to facilitate your reading, right? So afterwards, if you read it after class, of course you're going to know a little bit more about the story, probably know a little bit about the end, but even so you're going to be able to enjoy the story itself, and you're going to have the plus because you're not going to face as many difficulties while reading, because then it's going to be clarified during class, right? So no problem at all.
I know that he was in London and he was in a dinner with his friends talking about someone, and I just realized that
very good.
Already started the Zoom.
Very good. Thank you very much, Wagner. Ana, please.
I'm not sure about the names, but they were at this dinner, like Wagner said, that was paying some kind of homage to like a soldier, and he was like a very important soldier, something like that, like a general. And just like this priest comes at the narrator, that I don't remember the name now, and he's just like, you know what, he's a fool, he's not all that. And then we discover what he means by that. That's it.
Very good, very good. Very good summary, both of you. Thank you very much. Any other details that you would like to add, any of you? Something that called your attention? Please, Angela, go ahead.
Well, we have a fake hero in the story. This is the theme of the short story. And the clergyman who helped him to become a fake hero, I think he's a bit guilty of have been doing that. He's guilty. He's afraid that he will do something bad someday, and he feels guilty about it. I think this is a very important aspect of the short story.
All right. Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you for sharing your feedback and your opinion. Bruno, please.
I just want to come that something that I thought that was really fun in the story is that all the time he's going, okay, so now people are going to notice that he is fake. Now they're gonna know. And then something completely different happens and they continue with this fake hero. And then again, okay, no, they cannot accept this. They are gonna know now. And then something happens and it goes on. And I think it's very interesting. I like it very much.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you very much, both of you, for your comments. They were brilliant. All right, people. So this is something that is very interesting because I think that most of you have sided with the clergyman, not with the war hero, right? And this is a story that's, to me, it seems a little bit ambiguous, right? We can either side with one side and believe that the clergyman is a little bit just like dismissive about the other guy, and about Scoresby, who is the name of the war hero, or that Scoresby is actually a fake, a farce, right? So you gotta, we're going to analyze the whole thing together, and then we're going to come back to the subject in order for you to tell me if you maintain your idea or if you have a different one, right? Which might also happen. It happened in the short stories in class last year, so I'm sure that it might possibly happen here as well. All right, so let's begin first by contrasting some of the techniques and the excerpts that we see in the celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County that you haven't read yet, but I just wanted you to focus in what is said in the first paragraph, right? If you can say no, right? But I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna try my luck here. Wagner, do you mind reading the first paragraph, and maybe Anna, could you read the second, please?
In compliance with the request of a friend of mine who wrote me from the East a column on good nature, Guérios, I never heard that.
Guérios, very good.
Old Simon Will.
Nobody has, only here.
And inquired after my friend's friend, Leonidas W. Smile, as requested to do. And Hereton append the result.
Hereunto means like in this present essay, right? Here, he's using a fancy word to say here, right? But hereunto, or here from this moment on, I enclose the result of my inquiry. Thank you very much, Wagner. Ania, please.
Note, this is not a fancy sketch. I got it from a clergyman who was an instructor at Woolwich 40 years ago and who vouched for its truth.
Okay, so we do have two excerpts here that have some things in common. All of these stories that are going to be presented to us, they have been told by someone else, right? Or they have been heard in another kind of situation. And this is like the exact type of characteristics of tall tales. Usually you've heard, somebody told you, so you don't have to commit yourself to be the one that is telling something that is absurd and not true, or maybe telling something that possibly the others who are listening to you are not going to believe, right? So why do you think Mark Twain uses this technique specifically in this story that we have read? Do you have any ideas, any theories about it that you would like to share? Please, Anna, go ahead.
Just like you said, when you started the class, you were talking about how he likes to keep us doubting and keep us sort of like questioning the truth. So when you say, oh, this is just, you know, something I've heard, this is not like me telling you, someone told me this, you sort of excuse yourself from the duty of the truth. You know, you're telling something for the fun of it, you know, it's just gossip. And I don't know, that's the feeling. I don't.
Very good. That's it. And you use the word that is very important, and that for sure you have seen or heard or met someone or even yourselves in the situation of using this kind of technique to gossip, right? Which is something that humans do a lot, which is usually like this. Okay, I've heard that those people, they have actually committed a crime, but I've never seen any kind of proof. I just heard of it. So I'm just telling you the story, but I'm not so sure. So when I vouch for its truth, or the person who has vouched for this truth, who is telling us, then we are just like, okay, is this actually true, or I'm just going to be a vehicle of telling the story, right? So this is more or less what he's telling here. And when we think about the kind of genre and technique of the story, and we think about the name of it, tall tale. A tall, it's something that is tall. Of course, we know that in terms of height, a person can be tall or short, right? But also can be something that refers to exaggerations, right? On the other hand, we also have the word tale, right? The word tale, it usually refers to stories that have been told by mouth, right? Not written, but they have been told. So tales, they are told, yes. And of course, they are very similar to the structure of short stories. And tales are the first versions of short stories, of course. But their origins are much more on the oral part. Bruna, please.
Just one question actually about the English itself, I would say. But you said this tall tale is a genre inside the literature, right? But can we use it as well as an expression in English? Like, for example, someone told me a gossip and said, oh, this is tall tale.
Sure.
Oh,
It can be
okay,
used.
nice.
When we were preparing the class, Áureo used an expression in Portuguese that I've never heard before. Oh, I think I've heard it, but I don't think I use it very frequently, which is like história de pescador. I've never heard this term before, but I think that it's something that possibly you have heard. And Áureo have heard because he is from Santa Catarina, and Santa Catarina is a state which is famous for fishing, right? So possibly this is more famous that not from where I'm from. I'm from Minas Gerais, and I was raised in Rio Grande do Sul. So I have never heard this before, but it actually talks to me. So I think that the same thing as we can use this as a genre in English, we can also use it in conversational talk, just to refer to something that might seem like an exaggeration of some kind of the person, on the part of the person who is telling, or the person who told it initially, right? So this is very, very good questions, all of you.
Thank
all
you.
right. You're welcome. All right. Any more comments? Any more questions that you would like to make, or shall we go on? Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's begin, right? So as usual, we have our glossary here. And I'm going to read this one because there are lots of terms that I would like you to pay attention to the definition here, right? And the other ones I'm going to ask you for your help in order to read it together, right? So this is the beginning, the opening paragraphs of the short story Luck. It was at a banquet in London in honor of one of the 2 or 3 conspicuously illustrious English military names of this generation. For reasons which will presently appear, I will withhold his real name and titles and call him Lieutenant General Lord Arthur Scoresby, VC as Vice Chairman and KCB as Knight Commander of the Bath, which is very prestigious type of title. What a fascination there is in a renowned name. Dare say the man in actual flesh whom I had heard of so many thousands of times since that day. 30 years before, when his name shot suddenly to the zenith from a Crimean battlefield to remain forever celebrated. It was food and drink to me to look and look and look at the demigod, scanning, searching, noting the quietness, the reserve, the noble gravity of his countenance, the simple honesty that expressed itself all over him, the sweet unconsciousness of his greatness, unconsciousness of the hundreds of admiring eyes fastened upon him, unconsciousness of the deep, loving, sincere worship welling out of the breast of those people and flowing toward him. That's very flattering kind of description, right? So we know that it's flattering and fishy, as RuPaul would say, right? Sometimes it seems as we have like a little bit of spark. He's being flattering in his description. He's trying to describe this man as a very notorious and outstanding character, but at the same time, there is like this undertone of just like criticism just under the surface of the text, right? So what do you find of this text? Do you think this is, do you agree with my reading, or do you have any other comments that you got from this first paragraphs? It's sure embellished in terms of words, right? Yes, Wagner, I think you wanted to say something.
I was trying to find the hands to hold here. I never use Zoom, only Google Classroom. So I agree with you, and I believe that he's trying to romanticize, I don't know, the situation.
Very good word, romanticize, it's a word.
About this character that he's trying to present in us and show to us.
Very good, that's it, right? He uses those beautiful words, very embellished vocabulary, something that is very literary, right? It's not really something that you see. I think that sometimes the British might speak like that, and sometimes when they speak like that, we feel like, oh, they're so polite, right? To say the least. But this is, of course, this is on purpose. Angela, please. Yes.
Now that I have read the whole short story, I noticed that this unconsciousness seems to me the way dumb people look. When someone is dumb, it looks like they look like nothing, and this unconsciousness can be the way dumb people look. In fact, he's dumb.
I mean, like the General Scoresby is like unaware of his success, right?
Yes, he's completely dumb from the first description to the end. He's completely dumb. He's still unaware of what's going on around him. He's like that. And
he's just like fleeting among his success, just like enjoying.
And as the narrator doesn't know his story yet, he thinks that, well, he's so superior that he looks like that. But in fact, he looks like that because he's completely empty. And we know that this now.
Very good. Thank you very much, Angela. And I think you wanted to say something.
I completely agree with Angela. I was just about to say that he's just completely aloof, right? He's like, he has no idea about anything. And the narrator is like we would be at an event when the event is for that person. You would never like, oh no, he's just not thinking about anything. You would be like, oh, he must be very calm and he's just breathing and feeling everything. You would never like not believe that person deserves to be there, you know? And especially, let's just say, especially a white man in that position of a powerful military, you would never question that. You'd be like, yeah, no, sure, he deserves. Why would he be here if he doesn't deserve that?
And it's not a lower rank, right? To be a general, you got to be in the career for a long time, right? So he is in a higher rank. So, and we know that we have all of these awards or titles that he has earned: a vice chairman, a knight commander of the Bath, most honorable order of the Bath, British Order of Chivalry, right, etc., 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 right? So it's not just those, there are more, but he's just like sparing us from the greatness of the character. So it's something for us to accommodate in our minds and keep thinking about the subject. I think Áureo want to say something.
Even the etc. One etc. is not enough, right? So he has so many titles that he has to repeat it 3 times, right? Etc. 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 precisely to give us the. And of course, there is an element of mockery in here, as Beatriz was saying in the chat, right? Because imagine you introducing someone at a lecture in the university, someone who has many titles, right? And then you're like, yeah, this is the ambassador, and yeah, and some other stuff I won't be telling you, but etc. etc. Go on, please speak. So of course, in such a formal situation, this is kind of mocking as well, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And that's it. We have a very we have an undertone. This is when we use like it's something as if, I don't know, maybe you're going out for a party, and then you put on some beautiful clothes, and then you ask your mother, what do you think, mother? Do I look okay? And she looks at you, says, you look fine. And it's just like, I think I need to change right now because, or maybe a friend, I don't know, it doesn't have to be a mother, but somebody, when somebody tells you with an undertone, is because they are hiding what they actually mean behind, underneath their first text, right? So this is something for us to exercise as interpretation, right? So this was the description of what was happening. And then we know that the person who is saying this is the narrator, right? But then something else happens, yes? I don't know if Bruna could read it for me, please. I'm gonna call you, and if you don't wanna read it for me, just let me know.
Okay, I can read. The clergyman at my left was an old acquaintance of mine, clergyman now, but had spent the first half of his life in the camp and field, and as an instructor in the military school at Woolwich. Just at the moment I have been talking about, a veiled and singular light glimmered in his eyes, and he leaned down and muttered confidently to me, indicating the hero of the banquet with a gesture. Privately, his glory is an accident, just a product of incredible luck.
Thank you very much. I find this introduction to the clergyman very, it's actually genius, right? Because you see, the narrator is there, one of the invites, one of the invited guests, right, to the banquet, to the dinner, and then there is this clergyman who just gets to him and says, "Look, his glory is an accident, just a product of incredible luck." And at the same time, we think, okay, maybe this guy is telling us the truth, because by the way he's telling us, he has met this general before, right, in other parts of their lives. But at the same time, how do you judge this movement? Like, look, blah, 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 and then he's telling something. What do you think about this first attempt of introducing his perspective to the story? Do you think that he is a person who is well resolved with what he thinks about the general, or I don't know, what are your thoughts about this paragraph? Good old gossip, Bia saying. Okay, now I can read the chat. It's just, like, to me, it's the kind of situation when you have, like, I don't know, there is this I don't know, like this party, and then there is this girl who arrives, and this girl is very beautiful and is calling everybody's attention, and then there is a person sitting next to me and says, she's not that beautiful. Which is something that to me has more or less the same sound, but we do have evidence of something different having, like, because they do have a background together. they have old history, as we can say, right? So any thoughts about this paragraph, or shall we go on? No? Somebody meant to say something. I heard the microphone. Go ahead, please. Be my guest. Just start speaking, because you are more than welcome to participate. No? All right. Okay, so we do. Okay, Bruna is raising her hand. Please go ahead, Bruna.
Well, it's just a comment actually, but I think that's the part for me. And as you said, for example, in that party or something like that, that the person really starts to pay attention, like to really point out, like for example, taking this girl, as you said, this beautiful girl as an example, and you're gonna start to notice, for example, her behavior, or I don't know, details and things like that, so you could really say like, oh yeah, she's not that beautiful. Or in the case of the star, like, okay, as I said before, like now they are gonna notice that he's not that thing as well, right? And I think that's like the how could I say, when it really starts in the story.
Yeah, very good. It's like we have like a zoom in, right? The story zooming in that character, and now we're gonna have like this when the narrative is setting sail in order to begin this other part. And this is the moment where we are also going to have an exchange of voice. Before, the narrator spoke most, and now we have the clergyman speaking and telling his story to the narrator. And this is one of the things that, at least like to my students last year, they found a little bit confusing to really understand who is telling the story, right? But we do have a narrative shift, and this is very important to note. Anna, please.
I think that this is the point where we decide that we can trust no one in the story. No one is reliable, because we don't get to actually know Lord Arthur Scoresby. The story is told by someone else, just like the narrator described at first, and now this clergyman that clearly is a very creepy guy. Like, he just lurked through this man's life, and this clergyman that we don't, just has like a lot of hidden motives. It feels like that. So it's a point where you go like, okay, I don't know anyone in the story. No one is reliable. It was very like traiu ou não traiu for me, Yeah.
And this is the kind of question that we don't have the answer, right? So, and we'll never have it. But the thing is, what the author is doing here, he's giving us options. And of course, as human readers, subjective readers, we are going to side with one of the parties. This is our job, right? Usually we tend to side with one of which, and we have our reasons to side it, and then we tend to find the explanations to it in the stories. But of course, we know that the clergyman is a bit shady. Quoting RuPaul again, right? He launches his shade, and then he expects the other person, the narrator, to bite his hinge, and then he's going to start telling his story. Yes. So just another question for all of you, right? How would you characterize the clergyman and the general, Lord Arthur Scoresby, in terms of personality? Any adjectives that you would like to use to define those people? You already have like a person who is a bit shady, the other one who is a bit dumb and not very, who is unaware of his own success, sometimes too confident in order to, or maybe not that smart to be able to notice what is really happening. What else can you tell me about these characters?
Lord Arthur is clearly lucky.
Lucky. He's lucky. For sure. Any more ideas, people? You can launch it in the chat as well if you feel more comfortable with. I can read it now. No? All right, so this is something that is going to be appearing throughout the story, and we're going to scrutinize all the text to be able to find our answers in the end, right? So let's just a little bit go a little bit off the text, and then we're going to come back to it. But when we are trying to understand what the text is about, we have to further understand what is the title about and what is the main theme of it, right? So, Bia, do you mind reading this definition of luck for us, please?
No, I'm very sick today.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Maybe, I don't know, do I have any volunteers, or shall I volunteer you?
Yes, I can read.
Please, go ahead.
Luck is the phenomenon and belief that defines the experience of improbable events, especially improbably positive or negative ones. The naturalistic interpretation is that positive and negative events may happen at any time, both due to random and non. Even improbable events can happen by random chance.
All right, thank you very much, Claudia. Beautiful reading. All right, people. So we know that luck sometimes is defined as something that is random, sometimes is non-random. Sometimes believe people who are not even superstitious, they believe in luck, right? And others who are not superstitious at all, they do not believe it or believe it. So I think this luck is not something that goes on either of the sides of being skeptical or being a believer, right? It goes on both sides. And now I want to hear from you. Do you believe in luck? And if yes, do you consider yourself as a lucky person?
Well, I don't know if I believe in luck, but I have many situations in my life that everybody call as luck. Just give an example, like I was at my place where I work in, it's in a school, and it was in the end of the year, and every time they do some, they just give some gift for cheering the new year, etc. So on that day, I just leave the place. When I leave the place, my number and my name was called, but I wasn't there, so I just lose the the prize that was a
Oh no.
go to a beach, pass one weekend with a partner or someone that I could call to just waste the time with me, but
Oh my goodness.
luck and the bad luck.
Luck or not luck, this was unfortunate, right? Oh, I'm so sorry. But new opportunities will come. If luck exists, then it will follow us in other situations in life, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Via is saying that she believes in luck. Angela is saying that she is lucky. Any other impressions, people, of your own perspective? If you're a lucky person, if you believe in luck? Oh, that's a good trick to have, right? A very good skill. Every time that I fall asleep in the bus, I wake up just in time to get off. Very good. Very, very good. All right. Any more ideas that you would like to share with us?
Well, I don't know, something that I would say is just to be lucky. It's also not only something related to belief, but with a point of view, I would say, because I can always like sometimes you can win a prize and you say, oh, okay, I'm lucky because I won it. But sometimes you can just say, oh, I don't know, it's good that it happened to me or it didn't happen to me, but not especially as you were chosen to be the one, you know? So I don't know. Something that happened and I felt lucky that it didn't happen in another moment. So it's kind of a perspective and as well, and not only about feeling lucky. I don't know if I can you understand me?
Yes, of course I can, and I agree with you. I agree with you. And this is something that sometimes it is hard to say because, for example, I myself consider myself to be a skeptical person, right? I'm not superstitious, or at least not to the point of my awareness, right? This is something that sometimes we don't really, we're not really aware of how superstitious or how, I don't know, prone to believe in some things that we are, but sometimes when we are put to test, then we have a different kind of behavior than we think initially we would have, right? So I'm not so sure. I cannot really say about if I believe in luck. Maybe sometimes I think it depends on the situation, as Bruna was saying. But also, I think in Portuguese, I think in English as well, people refer to being lucky as being awarded with good things in life, right? Like, for example, I'm lucky I have a good family around me. I'm lucky I have great friends and all. But if you like having great friends, it's not like really a matter of luck. Usually, if you're a good person, you attract great friends as well. So this is mostly the case, right? But sometimes no, and this is life. So I'm ambiguous in terms of understanding what is luck and what is not, right? I think it has much to debate on. And Bia is saying that she thinks there's a bit of balance as well. Yes, I agree as well. I also have a lot of terrible stories on buses. Okay. Yes, that's true, right? That's true, right? So this is something for us to think about. Yes. So when we think about the general, right, as a lucky person, we have some examples that the clergyman is going to narrate to the narrator of the story, and then he's going to give us examples on what could he think would be the reasons that that Scoresby, the general, would be considered lucky in his opinion, right? He has some examples here, and he's also going to tell how have they met in different occasions, right? I don't know, Angela, could you read the first paragraph, please? And maybe Bruna the second, please.
Okay. About 40 years ago, I was an instructor in the military academy at Woolwich. I was present in one of the sections when young Scoresby underwent his preliminary examination. I was touched to the quick with pity, for the rest of the class answered up brightly and handsomely, while why, dear me, he didn't know anything, so to speak. He was evidently good and sweet and lovable and guileless, and so it was exceedingly painful to see him stand there, as serene as a graven image, and deliver himself of answers which were veritable miracles for stupidity and ignorance. All the compassion in me was aroused in his behalf.
Thank you, Angela. If Bruna could continue, please.
I said to myself, when he comes to be examined again, he will be flung over, of course. So it will be simple and a harmless act of charity to ease his fall as much as I can. I took him aside, and found that he knew a little of Caesar's history. And as he didn't know anything else, I went to work and drilled him like a galley slave on a certain line of stock questions concerning Caesar, which I knew would be used. If you believe me, he went through with flying colors on examination day. He went through on that purely superficial cram, and got compliments too, while others, who knew 1,000 times more than he, got plucked. By some strangely lucky accident, on an accident not likely to happen twice in a century, he was asked no question outside of the narrow limits of his drill.
Thank you, both of you, for the reading. And just here, we do have some examples about his personality, right? He is guileless. Guileless, it's an adjective that comes from beguile. I don't know if you remember, some years ago, there was this film, I don't remember who was the director, but it was the beguiled, right? It means like the deceive, a person who is not, he's charming and he can be deceitful, right? And he is guileless. It means that he doesn't have this drive of deceiving someone, right? So he is a person who seems to be very lucky and very unaware of what is happening. He seems to have been able to do the basics in school, mostly because he wasn't asked other questions that he could possibly have written wrong, right? So this is something that we have been described here. Yes. And yes, and we know that the clergyman was his instructor, right? So probably we do have an age gap. The instructor or the clergyman would be someone who was a little bit older, right? As we might imagine, than Arthur Scoresby himself. And also he says in the last paragraph that he found that Scoresby knew little of Caesar's history, and that he didn't know anything else. So he went to work and drilled him like a galley slave on a certain line of stock questions concerning Caesar, right? Which he thought it would help him. And he uses this term here, a galley slave, because he is referring to two possible things. As everything that we see in the short story, we do have double meaning, right? So for galley slave, we have the first adjective referring to a person who works very hard, typically performing menial or thankless tasks. It can be referred to in everyday talk, but it also can refer to actually being a slave in a boat, right? And this is an image of a galley slave. Yes. While we were preparing the class today, Áureo told me that Cervantes, the author, was in a galley slave. He was a slave. He was kidnapped when he was a teenager, and then he served as a galley slave. I think he's gonna tell you a little bit more about this.
Yeah, Cervantes used to be a military man, so he fought in a militia, and he even fought a few combats in Italy, in Spain, and fighting the Turks in the Mediterranean in 1575. He was captured, and for 5 years actually he was a slave in a galley slave, and he tells about that a little bit in the first preface of the Don Quixote. So this was before writing Don Quixote, right? The first part of Don Quixote was published 20 years later, and then the second part 10 years after that. So the first part is from 1595, and the second from 1605. So it's super interesting that one of the greatest authors of Western literature was actually a galley slave for 5 years. So, yeah.
Thanks, Áureo. So when you see the image here and you try to reenact this image when he is thinking that the clergyman is actually trying to tell us that he would feel himself as to be in this kind of same situation, an instructor in a galley slave, and of course, like he would be working a lot and hard and not having the fulfillment of the results that he wanted to achieve with Scoresby. Again, it's just like a very hard image for us to think of it, right? So it gives us an extra layer of meaning for us to understand a little bit more about the characters, right? So I think that in the sense, the reason why he uses this reference is really to confuse us and possibly to address Scoresby in a way that as if he is a lost case and he is the one who is doing all the work, although Scoresby doesn't doesn't give back in terms of being a good student and as of being like a bright student as well, right? All right, so he continues his description by saying that after Scoresby was able to ace the test, he felt stupefied. Before I continue, Ludmila, please.
Hi, first, I'm sorry, I don't speak so very well, but
don't worry, just speak ahead, go ahead.
I was thinking that the clergyman puts all the guilty in the Scoresby, and in the short story, he is presented as a person who is sweet, kind, and somehow lost in the middle of the situations, but the clergyman just puts the guilty of he spent the life working for something and in some kind of pain, and it's a little amargurado.
He feels resentful. Yes, I'm gonna write here on chat. He feels resentful. Yes, and this is more or less what I think as well. Like sometimes he pleads all the guilt to Scoresby, but at the same time he feels himself possibly not being rewarded by the whole by the part that he had in constructing the image that Scoresby does have in public, right? It can also be one of the reasons. But again, as we mentioned before, this is he is an unreliable narrator, right? So he is narrating to us what he feels like, and it's our duty to be just like, right? We have to doubt it. This is our choice as literary readers that are very serious about our reading. We have to be just like, what are his motives? But at the same time, he might be legit in what he's saying, but at the same time, we do have the other side of which we don't have access because Scoresby doesn't speak in the story, right? And this is one of the things that are very important. Yes, or maybe he's jealous and bitter as well, right? As Áureo was saying. All right, so this little part I found it was very interesting because he is reacting to this part here, right? That some of his other thousands other mates got plucked, but he got good grades on the evaluation, and then he says, the clergyman says, it was stupefying. Well, although through his course I stood by him with something of the sentiment with which a mother feels for a crippled child, and he always saved himself just by miracle, apparently. And at this moment, the reader is just like, bitch, please, come on. What are your motives here? What are you saying? Are you actually feeling bad for Scoresby, or do you want also to be acknowledged in all those prizes that he has been awarded with, right? So this is the moment that we are just like this little puppy here, just like, okay, let's see what's gonna happen later. Yes, and then the torture in class continues, right? Because this is the moment that he's going to find, because with history, it didn't work. Right? He tried to drill him in tests in history, but then he got A's. Like he got very good grades in the test. But now let's torture him with mathematics, because of course this is just like the Achilles feet of everybody, right? So this is the moment where he starts talking about exposing him through mathematics. Yes. I don't know if Anna could read the whole paragraph. Do you mind, Anna? Is it too long?
Sure, it's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Now, of course, the thing that would expose him and kill him at last was mathematics. I resolved to make his death as easy as I could. So I drilled him and crammed him, and crammed him and drilled him, just on the line of questions which the examiner would be most likely to use, and then launched him on his fate. Well, sir, try to conceive of the result. To my consternation, he took the first prize, and with it, he got a perfect ovation in the way of compliments. Sleep. There was no more sleep for me for a week. My conscience tortured me day and night. What I had done purely through charity and only to ease the poor youth's fall. I never had dreamed of any such preposterous result as the thing that had happened. I felt as guilty and miserable as the creator of Frankenstein. Here was a wooden head whom I had put in the way of glittering promotions and prodigious responsibilities. But one thing could happen. He and his responsibilities would all go to ruin together at the first opportunity.
Thank you very much, Anna. So this is it. He just doesn't only want to expose Scoresby. He wants to give the two shade, how to say how do you say this? When you do like a stroke of spear, right? And he wants to kill him. And he uses this word, right? He wants to expose him and kill him at last, right? Which was, of course, it's metaphorically, but we know what he means when he says that, right? So to his consternation, after all he has done, the man was able not only to get the first prize, but his colleagues were just like, yay! Well, this is very unbelievable, right? Because who claps? Have you ever clapped to your friend who got like several A's in class when you got a test, a math test? I don't remember doing that. I think the thing that we did in class was just like, let me hide my grade here because nobody can see it. And the ones who are saying it, they're just like displaying to everybody and they're just like, I don't want to hear about it. It means like my grade was not very good. But let's leave it like that, right? So it seems a little bit strange, but well, we have to believe what he's saying, yes, or not. And then this is the moment when and I have highlighted this part because I think it's very interesting for us to reflect on the relationship between both of them, right? He says, the clergyman, right? I felt as guilty and miserable as the creator of Frankenstein, right? So my question to you now is, why does the clergyman seem to think there is a connection between himself, Scoresby, and Victor Frankenstein, the scientist who has created Frankenstein, the creature himself, right? So what do you think is the connection here? Go, Gita. Go ahead. Thank you.
Maybe he thinks he created a beast.
A beast, right? Uncontrollable beast.
Yeah.
Who's going to spread evil in the world, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Bruna.
Maybe like in the Frankenstein story, in the beginning, he thought like this would be like easy or a good thing, maybe. But in the end, the monster, or in the case, the Scoresby, right? He showed himself not as the other one expected, and it was getting harder to deal with him.
Very good. Very good. Any more comments? No? Gita, would you like to say something else? No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
I wish I had the vocabulary. And
say in Portuguese and we can help you construct the sentence.
É muito bom comparar Frankenstein com o Scoresby.
It's good to compare.
The one is a handsome one and the other one is ugly.
Yeah.
They are both naive. They are both, they have good feelings about other people.
Yeah, very
They
good.
are not mean. They are not mean. They don't have bad intentions.
Right, they're not ill-intended. That's a very good
They are
point.
not evil. They are not evil.
Yes, for sure. But at some point, I think what he actually is also saying here is that things got out of hand. I don't have control anymore.
Yeah.
Therefore, if this guy who is just like he's naive, but he sometimes
what did I create?
I know. And then
Yes.
this man is going to war, right? So what is going to happen if he does something that I cannot really vouch for, and then I'm going to be responsible for that, right? So this is more or less the possibility, right?
Because he was not harmful, and suddenly he can be. Suddenly he is.
Yes, for sure. That's it. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gita, for
Thank
your comments.
Thank you, Anna.
All right. Okay, here. So I might have to rush a little bit, people, because I had so much fun listening to you. But if you don't mind, if we extend a little bit more, right? I think that Bruno wanted to say something.
Actually, it's just a silly comparison. I don't know, but maybe a modern, not so modern anymore, but comparison would be like the Papaléguas e o Coyote. Because like one is always trying to get the other one like to fail and things like that, and the other one's always lucky, right?
Yes, that's
So, I don't know,
good.
it just came to
That's
my
a great
mind.
comparison. That's a great comparison. Thank you very much. That's it. And that's it, people. This is just like the thing, what is happening, right? So he is always trying to prove that he was actually right, but then things got a little bit out of hand. But luckily, it was for a good deed, right? Not something bad. Yes. And then he gives some examples here. I'm going to read this one because I'm going to rush a little bit. Okay. And away we did go and were over the shoulder of the hill before the insane movement could be discovered and stopped. And what did we find? An entire and unsuspected Russian army in reserve. And what happened? We were eaten up. That is necessarily what would have happened in 99 cases out of 100. But no, those Russians argued that no single regiment would come browsing around there at such time. It must be the entire English army, and that the sly Russian game was detected and blocked. So they turned tail, and away they went, pell-mell over the hill and down into the field, in wild confusion, and we after them. They themselves broke the solid Russian center in the field and tore through, and in no time there was the most tremendous rout you ever saw. And the defeat of the Allies was turned into a sweeping and splendid victory. Marshal Ken Robert looked on, dizzy with astonishment, admiration, and delight, and set right off for Scoresby and hugged him and decorated him on the field in presence of all time. And this is just like the moment where we are stricken. Like, is this the blow of a genius, of a total asshole, right? We don't know, right? We have to be like in the middle because this is what the text wants us to say, right? So a word that keeps happening, keeps appearing over and over in the story also has a double meaning, right? So for instance, the clergyman always refers to the actions of Scoresby's as blunders, right? So blunder as a noun could, in regular conversation, could mean like a stupid or careless mistake, but also in chess, it can mean like something else, like a critically bad move, which is usually caused by some tactical oversight, whether it be from time trouble, overconfidence, or carelessness, right? So we don't really know which one could be more related to the personality of Scoresby, mostly because he's usually described to as just like a person who is oblivious, right? It just like he seems to be like fleeting, and life is happening and he's going with the flow, and sometimes he's lucky and things will go well for him. But he doesn't seem to be overconfident, at least not through the kinds of actions and examples that we have here. Yes. So in this sense, I think that it could be something unconscious, but something that actually adds to our interpretation of the text, right? So, have you changed your mind to since the beginning of the text, or do you think you still continue with the idea that Scoresby is actually a person who's just like, he didn't deserve to be there? Anna, please.
The first time I read it, I felt like, no way this guy is that lucky. Like, no way. And reading it again with you, it made me think that the clergyman totally influenced the view of the narrator. And the narrator starts telling us a story that he's already heard, right? That makes sense. So he's telling it in a way that he can influence us. So he shows us Scoresby as this aloof, unaware guy that is just looks dumb. But like the clergyman feels like he's downplaying all of the accomplishments of Scoresby. Like, is he really that incompetent? Is something like that possible, you know? So it just, I think I changed my mind, but also I feel like I can trust no one.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's hard, right? It's a very ambiguous short story, and it was done like that on purpose, right? Even the fact that Mark Twain adds this little short note saying, "I've heard it from someone, and this someone vouched for it to be true," right? Maybe in one of those trips that he did when he travels in the world, throughout the world, right? So we don't know. But the thing is, the story is supposed to be like that. It's supposed to generate this kind of ambiguity in our perception. Any more ideas, people? We are about to finalize the class, right? We just have some other questions that I would like to ask. No? B is saying that she thinks it's something in between. He's a bit lucky, a bit smart. The clergyman is also jealous, but also a little bit right. Yeah, for sure. So this is the deal, right? Because if everybody was right, or everybody were wrong in the story, then it wouldn't be something human, something believable. I think it's much more believable if it's something that is told in a way that gives us doubt, right? Which is the kind of stories that I usually like. Yes. So overall, did you like the story?
I liked it very much. I'm sorry, I didn't raise
That's
my
great.
hand. Sorry.
No, don't worry. It just it's good to hear, Gita.
About the name Scoresby, score, goal.
Yeah, very good.
Very nice
Very good.
name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good
And he's
name.
good with names. I think Mark Twain is very good with names.
Good one. Very good
Yeah.
one.
Very good. Very good.
And I wish I had the vocabulary and we had the time to bring an issue. And it's an old story, an old tall tale, but it's a modern one if you think about military and politicians in Brazil, for instance.
Yes, of
in
course.
South America, for instance. You know.
Yeah. I think when we were in class last year in the short stories group, the theme arose in conversation. Of course, like when we have a smaller group, then we have more time to give a word to everybody, right? But I am completely overwhelmed by all your comments, and I thank you very much for participating, people. It was very nice, and I am glad that you liked the story, right? Because we really like the story as well, right? So the thing is, just to finalize our meeting of today, we are about to begin our semester, right? So this is the last short story of January, and then in February we already start the semester in a book a month, right? The second week of February on the 7th, and then we start by reading Kate Chopin's short stories Desiree's Baby which is very famous, and also The Story of an Hour, right? Both of them, they're very interesting, and they have very much to do with her own perspective as a writer. She was considered to be as a forerunner of American 20th century feminist tales, right? And she was Southern and also of Catholic background. Very much like our author that I really like reading, and we read last year in short stories, which is Flannery O'Connor. I don't know if you heard about her before, but she's a genius and she's unappreciated. And Kate Chopin, she's a very good writer as well. As I told you, some of you who were here last class, she doesn't have any kind of relationship with Frederick Chopin, right? It would be very nice if Chopin, the composer, was actually a distant cousin, and we would find lost correspondence between the two of them. But sadly, this is not true, right? So this is going to be our first author to be read in the short stories course in 2023. We're going to have these writers, right? Herman Melville, Eileen Chang, H.P. Lovecraft, Agatha Christie, Virginia Woolf, Thomas Mann, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and Alice Walker. So we begin with 18th century highest kind of prose, the author of Moby Dick, and then we go through different kinds of authors who have made the highest grounds of the history of literature, right? Go ahead, now, please.
Just one thing to mention about the short stories course is that it is a great opportunity to face some writers that are quite difficult to read. For example, Herman Melville or Virginia Woolf. They are tough. They're really tough. Even if your English is very good, they're very tough. So it is quite good to start small, you know. So you start with a short stories that are a few pages long. You get the feeling. You familiarize with the vocabulary, and then you can move on to more ambitious projects. So this is one great advantage of this course. And another one is that we really try to practice the idea of global literature. So really thinking about not only literatures in English, but looking to other traditions as well, traditions that are often put aside. So one example here is we have introduced in the course Eileen Chang, one of the greatest writers of Chinese literature of the 20th century. She's amazing. And so we're reading her in translation, right? And another example is H.P. Lovecraft, the master of horror, that is often like frowned upon, perhaps a little bit by literary critics, but we think it's very important to also, absorb more popular literature. Does not mean it is worse, just because everybody loves it. That's a good sign, actually, right? So we try to put those alongside Nobel Prizes, such as Thomas Mann, for example. Okay.
Yeah, very good. And also, like, it's a good way to start reading Herman Melville, right? My first reading of Melville was Moby Dick, and oh my God, at least I had therapy support because it was difficult. But if you read it guided by a specialist, as we are, and also if you read it with a group, they're going to have like time to explore it in detail, then I think it's going to be less traumatizing than reading it just like Moby Dick right away, right? And then we also, in the novels advanced course, we begin the semester by reading The Sun Also Rises by Hemingway, who is a very famous writer, right? Sometimes I am astonished by how famous Ernest Hemingway is, and how he's able to commode the audience and the readers. Usually people who don't even like reading, they like Hemingway, right? So it's also a good way of starting your reading routine, and also reading in English, mostly because his texts are super easy, right, to read. Although they do have very strong and profound subtext to it, they are easy on the surface of the text, which is something that helps a lot when you're starting to read in a foreign language, right? And The Sun Also Rises is part of the novel's advanced reading list.
I will be teaching this course, guys, and trust me, the readings are amazing. We'll be reading Kerouac, so very well known for his novel On the Road. This one is the sequel to that. Okay, so it's slightly shorter and super interesting. We'll read Pearl S. Buck, an amazing woman writer that has won the Nobel and the Pulitzer. So she's really unfairly forgotten, but she's pretty awesome. Ursula Le Guin, she's amazing as well, writing sci-fi. And Salman Rushdie, who's still alive and has won so many prizes. He's a pretty old man, so you get your chance to read him while he's still around, right? And this book is also super interesting. And we'll be talking, all those books, they're united by a common theme that is about traveling and then cultural contact. So, yeah.
Very good, people. And if you think that you have never met Salman Rushdie before, you might rewatch Bridget Jones' Diary. He does an appearance there, and it's very funny. I'm gonna try to find the clip and post it onto you on Instagram this evening. Right, and also I will be teaching the course of intermediate and short stories as well, right? But also the novels intermediate course. We're gonna start the year reading Lyman Frank Baum. He was actually from the US, although he has a very German name because his parents were German, right? They immigrated to the US to work. And we begin with the wonderful Wizard of Oz, which is a very interesting story, right? I myself am going to try to approach some of the things that I enjoy the most, which is analyzing the text through different kinds of perspectives, also environmental, right? Because if you don't remember, the story begins with a drought, seca, and also with a hurricane, right? So it's interesting for us to think of these very important classics through different perspectives. Yes.
And these are the other novels we'll be talking about. So they are united by the theme of happiness. And we'll be reading Nobel Prize winner Hermann Hesse, so German in translation, Siddhartha, very interesting novel, The Stranger by Camus, very philosophical. And then a great classic of English literature, The Secret Garden. This is probably the most difficult reading for the intermediate course this semester, but very well worth doing so, right? And then finally, my favorite, Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. Steinbeck is one of my favorite authors of all time. He won the Pulitzer, he won the Nobel, he won so many prizes. And this novella is super, it's heartwarming, but yeah, heartwarming, it's the word for it. Okay, can you go ahead? So those are about happiness and happy days, and then the opposition of it as well, with the lack of happiness, depression.
Yes, and also I think one interesting thing to remark on is that The Secret Garden, for example, usually when we think about it as grown-ups remembering the story when we watch the film or when we read the book when we were children or young adults, we tend to forget the critical part of it, right? Because this is actually can be read as a story to discuss other very important debates like colonialism, the relationship between the UK and India, which is very problematic in the story, right? So it's also something that adds to the discussion. And usually when we look for those books in order to organize the story, besides thinking about the theme, we also tend to think about what kind of things can we bring into the debate, right? And this is one of the things that we are mostly worried about when we want to introduce new stories.
So this is the schedule, guys. We have classes, weekly classes on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and the novel course on Thursdays, they are bi-weekly, okay? So 1 week you come to class, the other one you're free. So we meet twice a month to discuss in each session one half of the book. And we also have a novels advanced course Saturday, in which, once again, at Saturdays afternoon, in which you come to class once every 2 weeks. So you can choose between courses that are weekly with shorter classes of 1 hour and a half, or which are bi-weekly, and then you have longer classes of 2 hours and a half. Okay, and here are the prices. It depends on how often you come to classes, if it's bi-weekly or if it's weekly. And if you'd like to take more than one class, then we have one option of freely accessing everything. So you go for 2 or everything, so it's better that way. You can find everything else in our social media, in our website, and all this info. And
yeah. just something that is important to mention, because a lot of people ask me, Ana, can I start the semester with the novels advanced, and then the next semester, the next month, then switch to intermediate or switch to short stories? First, there's no problem, right? It's just up to you. Whenever you're interested in reading something, if you're gonna start reading Hemingway and then you're gonna read Camus in the intermediate, then for us it's fine. Just let us know and we are able to say that. Just pay attention to the beginning of the courses, people, just for you not to miss the first classes, because we already start the semester with reading, right? So all of you who have already enrolled, I've already sent you all the information for you to start reading. And of course, like if you decide to enroll on the first week of February, no worries, right? I can help you through the process and introduce you some material as well. But if you just pay attention to that, this is just what I'm saying. If you want to join not only not in February, but later in March, also no problem, right? We all usually ask to be in the beginning of the month so you can get the readings from the beginning. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much. All right, people. So we thank you a lot for being here. And we are very thrilled that all of you participated, not only speaking, but also through chat, and that you read the text and that you had fun. I hope, at least, right? Good. All right. Thank you very, very much, everyone.
Sorry. I really appreciate that you two just open a class, but I really like it.
Oh, that's great, Wagner.
In one of your classes.
Oh, that's great. And it's good to meet you, right? Because this is the first time that I am able to see you. So usually we interact on Instagram and I've never seen you before. Yes, so that's great. So in the next week, we're going to be producing like some videos for you on Instagram and also on TikTok, because now I am a TikToker I am 35 years old, going 36, but now I have to be on this side of the force. May the force be with us, right? So, so thank you very much. Have a great time and enjoy. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you all. Thank you for participating. Thank you.